It is a rainy day in Munich today. But here I am. I find the Neue Pinakothek in the heart of Munich, facing the Alte Pinakothek, that is basically the Old Masters Gallery. The Neue Pinakothek picks up where the Alte Pinakothek leaves off, at the end of the last decades of the 18th century. Even though there is a continuity of the collections, I notice a major contrast between the architecture of the two buildings. The Neue Pinakothek was built in 1981 after the original building was severely damaged during the Second World War. Here's what it looked like before. The concept and construction of the museum is closely linked to the life of one ambitious Bavarian king. Ludwig I witnessed Napoleon's collection of European art as a crown prince and was amazed by Antonio Canova's sculptures in Venice. These experiences led to a life dedicated to art. Ludwig not only wanted to resuscitate the art world in Germany in the 19th century, he also recognized art as a means of power. He was the first king in the German territories. Let's not forget that Germany as such didn't exist till 1871, who used art as a representation of power. His campaign started with the Glyptothek and the Alte Pinakothek and reached its peak with the Neue Pinakothek that showcases the works of artists that he helped become successful. The countless depictions of Ludwig, his reign, his family, and his empire serve as a constant reminder of why and how this museum came to be. At first, the sight of all these German artists, who I honestly barely know, scares me away, and I follow the system of corridors parallel to the galleries that connects the rooms dedicated to the sculpture collection. As typical of the 19th century, only the most important sculptures get to be exhibited along with the paintings. The gallery halls reflect a very classical style, with the light entering through the ceiling and the chronological order in which the galleries are arranged. There is only one hall that deviates from this theme, and it's a very special one. Ludwig's son, Otto, became the king of Greece as a result of his father's support of the Greek Revolution, and for a moment it seemed that the Wittelsbach dynasty would rule a vast empire in Europe. Ludwig commissioned Karl Ottoman to create a series of paintings about Greek landscapes. The series reflect the romantic view that people in the 19th century had of these wild, untamed, but also deserted places that bared witness to so much history. The paintings radiate power and also hope that there could be a better future for both Greece and the small kingdom of Bavaria. The simple concrete walls create a timeless experience and dreamlike state inside me. Of course, even after Ludwig's death, the collection was enriched by new works of art. Some of it went smoothly. Of course, you wouldn't think that getting a few paintings by Van Gogh would get a museum director fired and eventually cost his life. However, this is exactly what happened. Hugo von Tschudi was a very progressive art historian and the director of the Berlin National Gallery at the end of the 19th century. His attempts to procure some works of art by French artists met heavy resistance in the person of the German emperor himself, William II. He then found a new position in Munich, but his wishes were barely tolerated, and finally only his death saved him from losing this job too. His co-worker, Heinz Braune, however, started a foundation and fought the Bavarian state for years in order to be able to exhibit works of artists like Courbet, Daumier, Pissarro, Cézanne, Renoir, Gauguin, Van Gogh, or Rodin. I don't believe that the Neue Pinakothek could be such a famous and acknowledged collection without these pieces, but sadly some of their stories didn't end with their arrival in Munich. Probably one of the most famous paintings, Van Gogh's self-portrait, was deemed degenerate by the Nazis and was destroyed. Today I can only lay my eyes upon his still life, vase with 12 sunflowers from the same year. As I stand in front of it for a long time, admiring his use of the brush that recreates almost in a tangible way the texture of the flowers, and his use of colors that makes his work stand out in any gallery, I ask myself, is there any point in knowing history? Is there any point in missing the self-portrait next to the still life? Is there any point in understanding the stories a museum is built upon? Is it not enough just to enjoy and get lost in art? It is a hard question for me to answer. It has to do with the fact that art itself, as I believe, is all about pleasure. Does knowing diminish this pleasure? Not for me. For me, reaching a depth of understanding bears the soul of any painting or sculpture, and even today, the painting that made the biggest impression on me is an enigma in itself. As I walked into the last room of the museum, I was completely captivated by the eyes of this woman. I couldn't say why. They are faded, not really focused on anything. Looking at this room full of little objects that have no apparent connection to each other, however, reminded me of dreams where I get lost in a house that exists and evolves in my mind. The Greek god of sleep, Hypnos, resides over the composition that is so hard to decipher. Fernand Knopf, Belgian artist, took the title "I Locked My Door Upon Myself" from an earlier poem by Christina Rossetti. When I got home, I looked up the poem to help me unravel the meaning of this painting. The poem is called "Who Shall Deliver Me?" The first few lines go as follows. God strengthened me to bear myself, the heaviest weight of all to bear, inalienable weight of care. All others are outside myself. I lock my door and bar them out, the turmoil, tedium, gadabout. I lock my door upon myself and bar them out. But who shall wall self from myself, most loathed of all? This didn't help me decipher the painting as much as state even more questions, but one thing became clear. Aside from the melancholy, the painting doesn't offer any specific meanings. The realization hit me that it is me, it is us, the viewers, who has to fill it all with meaning through learning, intuition, of course failing, and sometimes success. I decide what I bring with me. Today, I decide to take this painting with me for the rest of the road.